it to the ocean. Our footprints, we just walked out here. Our footprints are already obscured by the wind. Ooh. Exciting. The wind sounds like a train outside this tent right now. We're in our MSR remote tent, which is like a four-season expedition tent. We used it on the inside passage for good shit 70 days of paddling. These are Lucy Light solar powered lights on the inside. Andy is currently outside right now fetching my sleeping pad for me because we both forgot to grab it. I just have like the little, like, you can see it I guess in the shot, like a Nemo switchback cellophane one right here, and I'm getting a inflatable on top because it's supposed to get down to 32 degrees tonight. Oh, here comes Andy. Well, it wasn't as cold of a night as I expected. I think it probably still did get down to like the low 30s, but maybe not actually 32. And I had my Nemo Disco sleeping bag instead of my Enlightened Equipment 0 degree. The Disco's a 25 degree sleeping bag. And I put a rumple blanket inside, and I woke up once cold, but I also had to pee. And it was pretty warm this morning, so that wasn't so bad. We're at Flanners Beach Campground in North Carolina. Today we're gonna drive out to the coast, explore some like kayak put-in options. I don't know if we're gonna paddle today because it's cold and windy. And we're gonna get Waffle House, which sounds really nice. As you might expect, the campground's pretty empty. My hair looks crazy. It was super staticky last night. I have to brush it. Campground's pretty empty, not like a couple of RVs and campers. I think we're the only tent here out camping in February in North Carolina. Apparently last week it was 70 though, so.
It's a 20-hour drive from where we live in northern Wisconsin to the Outer Banks, which is longer than I would normally drive for a camping trip, but I was hoping to feel the sun on my face and camp on the ocean, so who can really complain? I'd also never been to a Waffle House, and Andy and I, it's been a really long time since we've done a trip together, like a road trip or any kind of trip, mostly because I'm busy with my own freelance work, and he works like in management at seasonal jobs, which takes up a lot of his time. With the wind as it was, we decided not to paddle and instead just headed to the Cape Lookout Visitor Center, where there is a minke whale skeleton on display. That was pretty exciting. And then we hiked a like short path that takes you out through some of the salt marshes, and you can kind of look out into the seashore. It was a nice little walk. It was like so cold and windy. This was ideally the place that we probably would have paddled had the weather been better. We would have like paddled out and camped in Cape Lookout National Seashore. There's no established campsites once you're out in those islands, and you can kind of just set up wherever. Obviously wherever like makes a good campsite, and I think we'll probably try and come back and paddle here in the future. It was just, it's hard to see here when you're like near shore, but it was windy, it was rowdy, it was low 30s, and it was cold. We could have done it, but we didn't want to. From here, we decided to head out into the Outer Banks to Cape Hatteras National Seashore for the night and camp at Oregon Inlet Campground. It was actually so windy driving over this bridge that Andy could like really feel the car blowing with the boats on top. Yeah, we got to camp. The Oregon Inlet Campground is like kind of nestled in the dunes. There's not a lot of cover from the wind, which pretty quickly proved to be an issue for us. But it was still beautiful.
Oh my gosh, you can like see the sand moving.
I wanna go.
Okay, I'm gonna walk down to the water and then I'll be right behind you. Okay. Don't get what? Swept out? Oh, I'm not gonna get swept out. We made it to the ocean. Gorgeous light. I'm not gonna walk too far down for that exact reason. It's like windy as hell. Andy was just telling me all about how good the surf looks for tomorrow night. And it looks too big for me right now, and I kind of imagine it will look too big for me tomorrow night as well. But here we are, Cape Hatteras National Seashore. We're camping at Oregon Inlet tonight and tomorrow night. And the ocean is gorgeous. Anyways, walk with me back to camp over some sand dunes. Today we went to Cape Lookout. Not out to Cape Lookout because, as you can probably tell, like look at this. Can you see the wind moving the sand?
Crazy. It's super windy today, so we did not paddle, and I don't even know if the ferries run seasonally. Our footprints, we just walked out here, our footprints are already obscured by the wind. Oregon Inlet Campground is just south of Nag's Head, nestled in the dunes, and it's a really pretty spot with really dark skies, but again, like I said earlier, there is no protection from the wind. Kind of felt like we were camping on the moon, though. There were 2 other campers there the first night in the tent loop. They were pretty far from us. There was like a van lifer and then one other person camping in a tent. Dinner was camp tacos on the Jetboil double burner, and honestly, cooking in the wind was a little bit miserable. It was like all utilitarian, no fun. It was actually so cold that by the time we assembled the tacos, not only was the meat not hot, it was actively cold, and we ended up just eating in the tailgate of the car for a little protection from the wind. I was not gonna get up this morning. It's probably like, I think it got down to 29. It's like 29 right now, and it'll only get up to 32 by the time we're making breakfast. And it's windy as hell. I think like probably 30 knot winds, gusting to 30 knots, probably 20 sustained. And I was warm in bed. I was actually like cold last night. It was hard to stay warm. I had my 15-degree Nemo Disco. I said 25 earlier. 15-degree Nemo Disco with a rumple blanket inside for added warmth. The Nemo switchback sleeping pad, and then the Nemo tents are on top, which makes me sound like I'm a huge Nemo fan, which I guess is true. And I was cold. I was like fine, but I could have been warmer. And my alarm went off to watch the sunrise over the ocean, and I was like, you know what? I get to do cool things all the time. I'm warm right now. And Andy went out to go pee, and then he was like, you should really go. Like, how often do you get to do that? And I'm like, I like still pretty often, but he's right. He's right. Like, this is what else do I really have to do? We're here in the North Carolina Outer Banks. It's beautiful. It's like cold and windy, but I am not working in an office. And yeah, it's not so bad to get up for sunrise. Sun's up. Oh, it's gorgeous. So, I'm here in the Outer Banks, North Carolina's Outer Banks, at Cape Hatteras National Seashore near Oregon Inlet, and I'm on my sunrise walk, which is far more delightful than I anticipated when I was laying in bed really, really cold and did not want to come. So, I'm happy to be here. But basically, the Outer Banks of North Carolina are this ribbon of sand that like extends along the outermost barrier of the sounds, or like the sound is like a large bay protected from the open ocean, ergo open Atlantic here on our left, Outer Banks underneath my feet, sound about like less than a half a mile to my right. And it's this ribbon of sand that like protects the sound, protects mainland North Carolina, protects all the salt marshes and these like swamps and all these interesting ecosystems from the open Atlantic, which is a much harsher environment. Perhaps, obviously, this boat's getting tossed out here. I'm approaching Oregon Inlet, which I'll like talk about in a sec, but these like little barrier islands kind of form because you've got these big rivers that all push out sediment into bays, and then you've got the open ocean pushing in sediment, aka sand. Sand would be sediment. They combine, and wind, waves, and like, what would it be called? So like sediment, I guess, get pushed around, creating these islands. So like, these islands have formed here on the outermost. They're like basically like sandbars that have emerged from the ocean, protecting the sound. There's like hair in my mouth. Ew. They've emerged. They're protecting the ocean, or protecting the sound. On the sound side, there's other little barrier islands that like, it's all like, the whole sound is like pretty shallow and full of like sand and said sediment. But as the tide comes in, it like pushes in, fills up the sound with salt water. You have like saltwater marshes, estuaries, which all support, or like brackish water estuaries tend to support like a lot more species. The sound itself is
a place where like a lot of wildlife lives. But I'm approaching Oregon Inlet, which is like literally an inlet of the water into the sound between the Outer Banks, where the tide flows in and then out. And on an ebb tide, which is, we're nearing low tide, so I actually haven't checked the current calendars, current tables. But we're nearing low tide, so I imagine it's like near or approaching peak ebb, probably approaching peak ebb. All of the water on an ebb tide, where the tide is receding, funnels out through these inlets between the islands and is often opposing the incoming winds, and creates kind of like gnarly, bumpy waters for boats to come out. Even though if you want to get out to the ocean, you got to go through the inlet. So if you're ever like scrolling on Instagram Reels late at night and watching videos of those boats down south like bumping out into the ocean, that's kind of what you're watching. Anyways, the Outer Banks are like really lovely and just still in bad. Can't blame them. That was very nearly me. I'm not sure I'm gonna walk all the way to the inlet. I think I'm gonna turn around pretty quick here. Yeah, but that's like the cheap geology version of how the Outer Banks formed and why they're ecologically relevant. I could list species, but maybe I'll let you get a field guide. If you're looking for like a demonstration of how an inlet formed, you can see like the depression in the sand here in front of me. Those are my footprints going through it, and like up there, kind of like up my shadow, you can follow the shadow. When the tide was higher and like waves came in, it deposited water in there, and it all needed to flow out somewhere, so it outflowed here at this little depression in what would have been then a rip current. Like, this is a rip current channel, but basically the inlets between the Outer Banks are just like deeply cut, well-established rip current channels. Kind of cool. A recommended read on like such subjects as like reading the water and understanding what you're looking at is How to Read the Water by Tristan Gooley. That is like a very fun book. If you're looking for nonfiction. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind. I very much had to follow my footprints back to the spot in the dunes that I crossed over, and I'm glad that like the wind and waves didn't wash them away, because I'm not sure. I like classic rookie mistake, didn't note where I walked out from, but the footprints are still here, and I found it. Also, like, I could have walked the road and walked back to the campsite fairly easily, but I didn't. Oh, beautiful morning. I am glad that I'm not still laying in my tent and I get out and went for a walk. Thanks for coming with me.
Back at camp, we again found ourselves battling the wind and opted to make coffee directly in the back of the pickup and ended up switching stoves halfway through. We had breakfast plans to cook, but decided coffee and donuts was a lot easier.
It's about 9:30 a.m. I am hanging out in our tent. It's an MSR Remote 3. This is what we used when we paddled. We did like a 70-day paddle of British Columbia. So this tent feels like home. It's extremely wind resistant. It's got this massive vestibule that I'm in right now, where you can sit, like, this is just protected from the rain outside of the tent, and I always have like a closed cell foam sleeping pad, so there's like a nice spot to sit and keep your stuff clean. And then the inside of the tent is pretty spacious as well. Like, Andy and I comfortably fit like a handful of our gear and most of our stuff. We got it specifically for our British Columbia paddle, and when the two of us are camping together, we use it pretty often, even if we're car camping or if we're down at Wausau, Wisconsin for whitewater. This is what we bring. Yeah, it is cold and windy still. We made coffee and breakfast. We did not make breakfast. We were gonna make breakfast, but it was actually so cold and windy that like the water took so long to boil that we were kind of like, by the time we make our like leftover tacos with egg, so we had tacos last night for dinner. It took a while for the meat to cook, and then by the time like we had assembled a taco each, it was like a completely cold taco, like very cold, and it was still good, but like not super satisfying. And I think we were looking at it and we were like, okay, like the water took like 20 minutes to boil, and we ended up switching stoves halfway through. We were using the MSR switch. I didn't really bring enough fuel. It turns out I I was so sure. I had like this big thing of leftover fuel that had like a little bit left. I'm like, that'll be enough for a boil. Not like checking the weather, accounting for that it's windy and cold, and it's actually not enough for a boil if the weather's bad. Just because that's the easiest way to boil for coffee often. And then we ended up switching it to our jet boil. I think it's a Genesis, it's a 2-burner. It is new to me. It is like, here I am reviewing. But like, that's a pretty cool little 2-burner. Highly recommend if you've got like some cash to spare and want to upgrade from like your Coleman setup to something that, like, I think that the nice part about that is it will fit in a kayak and a canoe like more easily than your typical Coleman 2-burner. It's definitely not something you bring backpacking, but like car camping, paddle camping, anytime you can carry a lot of gear, it's a good choice. Anyways, took us forever to make coffee, and Andy is running into town right now, so I am chilling. I'm actually supposed to be sending emails. We don't have very good cell service, but we were able to take a work meeting from the tent last night. It drained like half of it drained an entire external battery that I brought, that usually I get like 10 phone charges off of, which is fine. Tonight's our last night camping, and we'll be in a hotel tomorrow night and heading back. But it's cold, man. It took us such a long time to cook breakfast. The coffee is still hot. We have a Stanley French press. Highly recommend this. This is like my favorite camp purchase. Makes a good, it's like indestructible, makes a good pot of coffee, and like keeps it warm for a long time, which is important to me. Anyways, it is so cold and windy that I'm like doing that thing where I'm like, oh my God, we brought the boats all the way here with the purpose of kayaking. The ocean, for me anyways, is like obviously a no-go, which I kind of figured it would be. But like the sound also looks pretty unpleasant today, and the wind is supposed to die off this afternoon, so hopefully we'll get out. But like, one thing about kayaking when the weather's like this is it's hard to warm up afterwards, and I don't want to be like cold indefinitely. And last night cooking in the cold was like pretty miserable, and I imagine if it was like a little bit damp, it would have been even worse. And I slept fine. Like, the sleep system is warm enough. I brought warm enough clothes. It's just the wind is brutal. Yeah, crazy to think that we like missed the good weather by a week, but that's kind of what you get. It's like a mixed bag when you're traveling in the winter. Even southern places tend to not be like super summery sometimes, and we've got the gear for it. We travel cold places in the summer. Oh, there's some birds here. Annoyed that I didn't drop very much food for them by the picnic table. Sorry guys, we have donuts for breakfast that went directly into our mouths, and coffee, so there are not goodies over there for you. Go forage by the seashore, there's probably clams. Anyways, suffice it to say, it's pretty cold. Mixed bag when you're traveling in the winter. I'm just happy to be out here. I really hope we get out and paddle, just because bringing the boats all the way here and packing all of our paddling gear is a lot of work, and obviously I would rather use the boats than not use the boats. But not at risk to life and limb. Yeah, it's kind of nice to be out here in the winter, where it's been a learning experience so far. Primarily that like the North Carolina winter I thought would be like sunny and nice, and it sounds like more often it is like sunny and nice. I thought it would be like high 40s, low 50s, and like occasionally bad weather, but like more like our northern Wisconsin April. And it has been a learning experience for me that it's much colder right now. And I do think some of the locals we've talked to and things we've overheard, like, this is an unusually cold winter, so I'm not wrong in that. But yeah, this is kind of the benefit of Andy and I being able to travel a little bit, is that we can come and have these experiences and learn the hard way what works and what doesn't. For example, like, big lesson for me this winter, between like today and last night, trying to cook food when it's like gusting to 40 knots and like in the 30s. Food does not stay warm after you cook it, and it is really hard. Like, it takes a longer time to get a pot to boil. I had the same experience in January. I ran like a women's winter camping, cross-country skiing and knitting weekend. We weren't like camping in like a tent, but we were posted up in a dry cabin with like wood-fired stove for heat, and cooking outside in the snow and like eating around the fire. And when I meal planned for it, and one of the things that I like penciled in was pancakes for one of the nights, and I like didn't really think, how long is it going to take to make pancakes outside when it's 5 degrees out? And like the bottoms got like super cooked super fast, and the tops like didn't really cook the full way, and it took me like an hour and a half to make breakfast for everyone. And I was kind of like, oh my god, these people are going to be so annoyed with me. They're starving right now. And I think they were hungry, but they were all really good natured people and super chill about it, which is like one of the things I love most about running these women's trips. There's like two main things I love about them. The first is that the people are always like really cool and flexible and treat me like a person, which is something that doesn't always happen when you're guiding, especially day trips. People like see you as like a fixture, like almost like an animatronic, a service industry employee, which is true. It is a service industry. But they definitely like, you're not like connecting with people person to person in any meaningful way. And as a result, they tend to be like kind of hard on you when you make a mistake. And like you do, it's out on the water, things are rough. Or if the weather's bad, even if the weather's bad on a day trip, people like look at the guide and they're like, well, why did we go out? And I'm like, well, it's raining. It's not dangerous. You can still get into the sea caves, put on a raincoat. Like we don't cancel for rain, bud. Many people enjoy paddling in the rain. Stuff like that. People tend to be like harder on you because they have this like service industry expectation. And there's definitely still that on like the overnight women's trips that I guide. But because it tends to be like women with plus or minus 10 to 15 years from my age, and women who like are joining because they found me online, and women who like are like-minded and want to connect with each other, it ends up being a really cool group where like right off the bat I feel like everyone is friendly and gelling, and like I feel like I like everyone and they like me. And so when things happen, like I'm like, hey guys, I've started the pancakes, it's gonna be like another hour, and then I explain like why this is happening. Everyone is like really chill about it and like laughs about it with me, and they're like, that's okay, we'll be hungry for a little while, thank you for making pancakes. And I'm like, that's what you're paying me for, is to cook for you outside. amongst other things, but like that's part of it. One winter camping win is that there are literally no bugs, so we can just sit here with the tent flap open, and the wind has died off quite a bit, so it's no longer freezing to do so. Okay, it's 4:30. I'm back in the tent. I actually like don't feel super well. We did drive over to Cape Hatteras and check out the like National Seashore, not Lakeshore, museum. The lighthouse was actually closed for renovations, which I was bummed about. I was looking forward to walking up in it, but that's okay, can't win them all. Then we got some like delicious pizza and subs down there before I decided to come back in, like chill for the evening, in the hopes that I will feel better enough tomorrow to actually paddle. This afternoon actually would have been great for it, but by the time the weather cleared up, we'd already kind of made the decision to head over to like Cape Hatteras and Hatteras Island, and I was already kind of feeling like a little bit just like lightheaded, headachy, probably dehydrated. I feel fine now. I took a Tylenol, ibuprofen, and then ate a lot of food, and that helped. But also I was just like so cold and couldn't warm back up very effectively, and it did not seem like a good idea to go hop on the water. So we're gonna take a chill evening. It's supposed to be a lot warmer now, like 50s tomorrow. It's still also quite windy. I think there's actually a gale warning, but we'll pick a route that seems right for us. Andy's hoping to play in some tide rips. I'm hoping to watch him play in some tide rips, preferably from a beach. I'm currently using the car as a windbreak. Walking to the bathroom against the wind was hard. It is sustained 20 knot winds, gusting to 30. The tent, like a couple of the stakes flew out, which is not like flew out of the ground, which is not like at fault of the tent at all. It is, the ground is sand, so it was like decent sand to stake into, but not when it's blowing like that straight at you. And there's like, this is a beautiful campground, but there is like no cover from the wind in any direction. Yeah, so Andy's packing up the last of his stuff. We're a little worried about like getting the boats actually up on the car with it being this windy. We haven't paddled yet. The ocean side actually looked okay for paddling, except that like the wind is so strong it's like ripping across the sand, and it almost like it's just so windy, and at some point you're gonna have to paddle against it, and if walking against it is hard, don't imagine we're gonna love paddling against it. And I'm a believer in sunk cost fallacy, which is like, don't make yourself more miserable just because you did something. So like, for example, just because we brought the boats down and like spent extra money on the gas, doesn't mean we should go out and paddle in a gale warning just because. And we're probably gonna have a better day if we go to a museum and like get some lunch and maybe get going on the road early and get back to Wisconsin at a better time than if we like force ourselves to paddle and then have to deal with wet gear for the next 2 days, wet, salty gear for the next 2 days, and like struggle against the wind and a gale warning, and it sucks. So we haven't made an official call yet. We're still gonna go check out the put-in that we were thinking about. I'm not optimistic. I can paddle in these clothes. I have before, but I've sort of dressed as if we're going to the aquarium.
So ultimately, the weather on this trip was not what we wanted, but that's just life, and we did not end up kayaking this day. Instead, we went to check out a lighthouse and walk around Roanoke Island. The weather continued to be pretty offensive, and we ultimately headed over to the North Carolina Aquarium on Roanoke Island. There are a lot of really cool things about the Outer Banks. You've got the geology and geography that have shaped the sound and salt marshes, the open ocean. You've got the history of piracy and Blackbeard and many shipwrecks, so many that the area is called the Graveyard of the Atlantic. For me, one of the most satisfying parts of traveling in the outdoors in general is understanding how all of these things kind of fit together, and I think the North Carolina Aquarium actually really beautifully tied all that together. From the species that live in freshwater rivers that flow into the Sound to saltwater marshes, beaches, and open ocean, the rivers, Sound, and Outer Banks are a lot more than just a beach vacation. And I'm really looking forward to coming back again sometime, getting on the water, and seeing how all of those pieces fit together in action. Spring 2027, anyone? So even though we didn't paddle this time, I still had a really good time. What do you think? Are the Outer Banks your next winter camping destination, or will you be sticking to a beach house?